for joining us today for the Home Care Hangout with LivHOME. My name is Sarah Christ, and I'm an elder care consultant with LivHOME, a care management caregiving company. What I do for the company is I'm out in the community developing relationships with legal financial advisors as well as medical advisors who identify that people have a need for our services, the care management and caregiving, and then I consult with the families and then have a care manager meet with them to do an assessment and then determine the level of care needed. And so I facilitate the process, and I truly believe that with LivHOME and the philosophy that LivHOME operates from, that I wake up every day taking care of the people that laid the foundation for the lives we live today. I'd now like for Rochelle Percher to introduce herself.
Hi, my name is Dr. Rochelle Perper, and I'm the founder and psychologist at Therapy Changes. We're a group practice in Point Loma and Rancho Bernardo, and our therapists specialize in helping people through difficult life transitions, including assisting older persons through the process of receiving additional support and care. And we've been collaborating with LivHOME now for the past 2 years or so. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you, Rochelle. Now on to Kathy Burkett.
Hi, I'm Kathy Burkett. I am the primary blogger and co-founder of Senior Care Corner, which is a website that's devoted to help family caregivers of seniors. Through my medical expertise, my years of family caregiving, I share my knowledge, my passion with other caregivers so that they can help their seniors get through day-to-day activities.
Thank you, Kathy. That's so needed. Now on to my good friend Joan Stevenson with New Mornings. Take it away, Joan.
Hi, I'm Joan Stevenson, co-owner of an assisted living dementia placement company. I have a wonderful business partner named Kitty. I was a sales director at a large retirement community, and about 7 years ago, Kitty and I saw a need to help families in a new way. So now we're helping place people in appropriate either communities or board and cares or skilled nursing, or providing home care. We work with LivHOME too to refer home care.
They are a wonderful partner. Now, last but not least, moving on to Martha.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to participate. I'm with Southern Caregiver Resource Center, and we are a nonprofit organization that's been around for almost 30 years. And our focus is the family caregiver, and really to try to make sure that they understand that they don't have to go through this caregiving journey alone, that we are that network of care should they choose our services. And all of our services are free, and we just want to make sure that people know that we are here for them.
Thank you, Martha. So to reiterate the topic for today, it's thinking ahead for the holidays and what to look for and how to have the difficult conversation. So the reason why we're discussing this is obviously we're headed very closely into the holiday season, and what we know is that, you know, families are more geographically separated these days, and so they may have phone conversations with their loved ones and everything appears to be okay on the surface. But then when they go home for the holidays to visit, they realize maybe things are not so great and there is the need for some additional assistance in the home for their loved ones, or placement, or whatever the case may be. The fact is that they need some help. And so we also know that it's very difficult to have that conversation with your loved one or with your client if you are a trusted advisor. So I'm counting on these advisors to give us some insight into how to approach this conversation. So leading off with a question, let's go with Rochelle from Therapy Changes. Rochelle, why is it important to have this conversation with the senior loved ones?
It's crucial to have the conversation with an elder loved one because we ideally want to make the experience collaborative. And the more involved the elder loved one can be in the process, the more that they can feel that they have some autonomy and some decision making in terms of where they go and what that looks like and how that happens, the smoother the transition will be for everyone involved.
Thank you, Rochelle. I definitely think that it's important to have the conversation so that way they feel as though they still have had their independence and they're a part of the decision-making process. Kathy, And from your experience, how can you tell if it's the right time to consider hiring elder care for your senior loved ones?
Well, that's a good question. I think that family caregivers really need to take a good look at their entire situation, not just their seniors, but also what's going on with them. How are they handling being able to meet their seniors' needs? Do they have the ability to continue to care for them, or do they need more help themselves? Is their caregiving putting their job in jeopardy? This is all part of kind of trying how to get you to make the decision that you need to make. Are they overwhelmed? Are they frustrated? And then to look at their seniors. What's going on with their seniors? Are they actually meeting their needs or not? Do their seniors seem to need more supervision? Are they safe? Not just during the day, but at night when no one's home there with them. Do they need more help with personal activities such as just getting clean clothes on, or making a meal, or taking a bath more than once a week? What kind of care are they really receiving, and do they need more? Are things not happening in the home that need to happen, like the laundry or getting the garbage out or doing just home maintenance? What kind of things are really going on in the physical part of the home? Has that senior fallen? When we start to get into falling more frequently, things can really get out of hand, and we see that they may need more help, more supervision. Like I said, are they not eating? Another big thing is, are they taking medications safely? Are they taking them on time? Are they taking too much, or not taking them at all? These are all kinds of considerations that will help guide you in your decision as a family caregiver.
Thank you, Kathy. Great response. The two things that you mentioned is, making sure that the family caregiver is taking care of themselves. And I often, when I'm consulting with families, that's a conversation I have with them, because it's really a matter of, if you don't take care of yourself, how do you expect to take care of them? So I'm really happy that you highlighted that. Joan Stevenson, good mornings. Whether during the holiday season or any time of the year, is there one common denominator in the calls you get that might prevent having that important conversation with a senior who needs care?
Well, we found before they can even have that conversation, daughters have a lot of fear. They're afraid of their mother. They're afraid of offending their mother, and my business partner and I call it the Scared Daughters Club, because they are very afraid of having that conversation. So they have to sit down between themselves and discuss how to approach the situation. And it doesn't only apply to daughters. About a month ago, we were dealing with a son, and he had a very important job, but he had given up his own life, basically, because his mother is so angry about having any care. So he shows up at her house every night at 5:30. He makes her dinner, stays all night until 8 o'clock the next morning, and makes sure that she's okay. But he's basically giving up his life because he's afraid of making her angry.
So there's that fear of being angry. And Rochelle, maybe you could address this for us too. Is there a certain element of role reversal that prevents a hurdle to this conversation, or to this person eventually accepting care?
Yes, and I'm glad you raised that observation, because so often what happens is that the child, who is used to being in more of the childlike role, now has to transition into being the role of a caregiver, or the role similar to a parent. And that's a really difficult jump for a lot of individuals who are more familiar with being in the childlike role. And I think that what helps with this transition is the knowledge and the self-confidence to understand that this is coming from a place of concern for the aging parent, and for that love and that care that the parent has once offered to the child, who now is in the position to return that in their later years.
Thank you very much, Rochelle. Martha, please explain, I don't think we quite got it in your introduction, but if you don't mind, explain exactly what your role is at the Southern Caregiver Resource Center. Martha? Okay. I think that we may have had a technical glitch. That's okay. We will continue forward. Let's go to Kathy. Kathy, how can people best prepare and be organized for telling their senior loved one they require elder care support?
I think that's another good question. It's something we should be prepared for. That's exactly the right wording. It's not something we want to just kind of drop on somebody. We want to have had ongoing discussions along the way. It's something that we want not to be punitive. We want the elder to see it as really being, as Rochelle pointed out, we care for them and we want the best for them. So ideally you want open and honest communications, not a one-time conversation, but a routine one. Let them know exactly how you feel they're doing. What exactly do you see as a strength and weakness of them being there without help? Have your examples ready in concrete so they don't think they're being attacked. You know, you can say something like, well, when I come over and I see that you're having trouble making a meal and I'm afraid you're not eating right. Or I think you're losing weight. Or didn't you wear that outfit the last time I was here? Has it been washed? Just give them concrete examples of what you see is going wrong, and that'll kind of open up the door and let them know you really do care for their well-being. Once they realize that, they might be a little bit more on board. And remember also, if there's a spouse in the home, it's two people, and you're really more concerned about one than the other. If you don't bring the whole family in on it, the other spouse is going to potentially fire whatever help you do bring in. I've had that personal experience. Our grandfather actually fired the caregiver we got for our grandmother, and we didn't know about it till weeks later. We thought she was being cared for, and she wasn't. So it is really a family conversation. Get everybody on board and have everyone really see what opportunities and options they have.
Wonderful, wonderful answer. So as far as having that conversation and explaining that they need help, or using the term caregiver, and I'm opening this up to all three of you that are on the call right now. Please give me your opinion on, instead of using the caregiver, if the person is incredibly apprehensive to the fact that they need some assistance or the term caregiver, what are your thoughts on explaining it as, maybe a personal assistant would be very helpful to you? I have found that they've been much more open to that instead of the term caregiver.
Absolutely. I can speak to that also. I think that very often how we approach the conversation and the words that we use make a really big impact in how well someone's going to receive that. Sometimes I've used the phrase companion or helper, personal assistant, as you said, really just someone to come in to make sure that everything's going smoothly, to help out with chores that you just can't get to anymore. And increase socialization, having someone to talk to connect with, to, have a laugh with, share a cup of coffee with. Ideally this would be someone that you feel very comfortable welcoming into your home. This is somebody that you trust with your loved one, and so this person becomes, to a certain respect, part of the family. And the more comfortable that the family members feel with the person who's coming in, it increases the likelihood that the elder family member is going to feel that much more comfortable also.
Thank you so much. I love the fact that you brought to light the psychosocial aspect of what home care can do for people. I really think that that's the key part of how we can help people. Would anybody else like to address how to use specific verbiage to get the elderly client to open up to the idea of care? What are some different terms that you've used in the past that have been helpful?
I think it's interesting.
I was just going to say, I think your term personal assistant is good.
Okay, thank you, Joan. Kathy?
I was just going to say, I think that I agree. A lot of times it is the words that you choose to use. But also, I think some seniors in this generation also have a lot of respect for people who are skilled and expert. So sometimes they may be looking for someone with more knowledge or more skills. So I think it depends on the particular senior and what kind of experiences they've had. Some might want to just have a companion. Some might not want a companion. It just depends on the person.
Thank you, Kathy. That's a really good point. I think that's why it's important in the beginning to spend the time to think about and strategize about what the best approach is, and yourself, but then also collaborating with the family and then the other people that are within that circle of trusted advisors to come up with what the best strategy is. So thank you. Rochelle, what is your best piece of advice for families who are about to tell their elderly parents they should consider elder care?
I believe it was Kathy who said that the conversation should really be routine and not a one-off, right? So if we approach it like an intervention where everybody sits down and talks to the elder person about this change, the person is likely to feel ganged up on, they're likely to resist, they're likely to be fearful. And so having the conversation be honest and clear, but in a routine way, something that can be revisited a little bit at a time over a period of time, it will be a little bit easier for the person to absorb that information and receive it little bits at a time. And I think also, assuring that person that they have some autonomy, they still have the independence, and really getting some additional help in the home is to preserve that independence and that autonomy. So really highlighting that you're not trying to take away decision-making powers, that you're really trying to support the person who's getting some additional assistance in being the best that they can be and enhancing them and helping them feel empowered to continue to live the life in the home that they ultimately want to be doing.
That's wonderful. I think that we all agree that it's important to maintain the person's identity and dignity and their sense of individualism. So thank you. Joan, what is another common obstacle in the calls you receive that can delay having a conversation with a parent? What is it that holds up the conversation?
One of the things that Kitty and I have found is actually sibling fighting. Say you have 4 daughters. You might have 4 different ideas of what they can't even get to the conversation about needing more help because one might think that she should stay in her home, the other one come and live with all 4 of them, take turns, another one says no, let's get her into assisted living. So they have to solve that fighting. We had a situation recently where 2 daughters actually stole their mother and took her and put her in a board and care that wasn't even great. But they didn't want the 3rd daughter to come in. They didn't trust her. They thought she was going to try to change the will. So that's just one example of fighting in a family. So that conversation can't even materialize until they settle their own issues.
Thank you, Joan. Rochelle or Kathy, would either of you like to address, or both of you, address the issue of family dynamics when it comes to having this conversation?
Yes, absolutely. I can address it. I actually did a mediation with a family who, there were 3 siblings who all had very different ideas for the mother as you were just describing. And I think that therapy can be helpful for those situations, to come and, in a neutral place, have the opportunity to express your specific concerns, review options that are available, and with the support of a mediator, come to some conclusions. And that folds back into what you were talking about earlier in terms of preparing for the conversation. It's so important for loved ones to be on the same page, to have an idea of what's going to be available for having that conversation, just to minimize confusion. And insulate the elder person from the hostility and the anger that can exist behind the scenes. So I think that really having the opportunity to talk it through beforehand with a therapist or a mediator or somebody a little bit outside of the family, a trusted counsel person or advisor, that is going to be very important.
Thank you, Rochelle. Kathy, would you like to address family dynamics?
I have a comment about that. I think it's so important. I agree with you, Rochelle. When there's multiple siblings, I think one of the things we can do proactively as families is to think about this years in advance. why would you have 4 girls and 4 power of attorneys? There's no way they can all agree. If we could put one family member in charge and let that person be the spokesman and actually speak from the wishes of the parent instead of, you know, trying to 4 people make 4 decisions, it would be so much easier if we could address it on the front end instead of trying to do it at the end, you know, at the last minute. So, but it's so difficult when you've got a lot of different family members, and especially when they're far away and they don't all see what's happening.
I couldn't agree more. I'm not sure how you guys all feel about this, is, you know, being very selective with which family member, if they are going to have the power of attorney, but also I really like the idea of a private fiduciary or a trust officer, because then it's completely unbiased, and I find that it really mitigates a lot of those family dynamics. So thank you. Okay, Rochelle, how can professional therapy assist older adults in accepting they may need elder care?
Well, one of the barriers that I've seen to an older person being ready and willing and open to additional assistance is fears, but also depression. And depression is very common in seniors, a lot more common than I think people recognize. And so professional therapy can help alleviate some symptoms of depression and help reinstill a sense of hope, a sense of autonomy, independence, dignity, to use some of the words that you mentioned earlier. And when a person is feeling a little bit more like them again, when they have some more energy and motivation, which oftentimes does happen when someone is able to recover a bit from depression, they'll be a lot more open to considering alternatives and realize that additional assistance can be one of the things that could ultimately be helpful to them.
Rochelle, thank you. I can definitely see where therapy would be beneficial, and I really think that the therapy would be, I find that it would probably be much more effective if it's supported with the care, taking the psychosocial approach, where it's not enough just to stick a warm body in somebody's home and say, there you go, here's your care. It's really a matter of what is it that that person is interested in? What did they used to do that's now difficult for them to do? And then using, especially a company like LivHOME that has that care management model, and then the caregiving where the care managers can coach the caregivers and kind of guide them to do this psychosocial approach to make sure that that person is doing those same sort of activities. And it probably, I find that with the therapy combined with this psychosocial approach, brings them out of the depression, and then they feel that sense of purpose, and then they're just much happier. So thank you. Kathy, what do people find to be the biggest obstacle in having the conversation that their elderly parents need professional help?
Well, I think that we've touched on a lot of some of the problems that we have as caregivers to actually make that link to help. We have sibling issues, we've got emotions, we've got depression. I think we also have to remember that these are our parents, and we've come through a lifetime with them, and what they were like 10 years ago is not what they are now, and I think caregivers sometimes are sad about that. So their sadness and their emotions may get in the way of admitting, you know, really they do need help. This almost puts them in the mind that, you know, I'm losing my parent. It's really making the full realization that the parent's not going to be here forever, and we've got to start kind of dealing with their decline, and that's sometimes tough for caregivers. Also, there's the point of anger. You know, why is this happening? Why did it happen to them? Why are they not able to do this? Are they just being stubborn and not taking a bath, or is it because they truly can't take a bath? So I think we have to get over some of our preconceived notions about why certain behaviors may be happening. And these are all obstacles to actually making a decision. It can be emotional for caregivers.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent points, Kathy. I'm glad that it's circled to the family members, because so far we've been really focusing on the hurdles that the potential client has with accepting help. But I'm glad that you brought up the point that oftentimes it is the family members, the daughters, the sons, the friends who have the same denial about whether or not their loved one needs help. So, Joan, why don't you go ahead and address that? When you've talked to family members, have you dealt with situations where maybe we'll just use the eldest daughter, for example, where she's in denial about her mom needing some assistance? And how have you been able to approach that and get her to realize that it's in the best interest of her mom to receive some assistance?
Well, sometimes it's baby steps. You can have baby steps and just saying, Mom, let's just go and try a respite stay. I'm tired, I need a little break, and so you can arrange a respite stay of 3 days, a week, and sometimes after the elderly client is in an assisted living place, they see, and this is great, there's socialization, the meals are much better than I fix at home, but it is baby steps, it's a little bit of nudging, sharing the fear of falling or losing a driver's license. For instance, recently in this little town where I live, a 91-year-old lady was backing out of the bank space, and she backed straight across the intersection and killed a 45-year-old lady. The lady was across the way putting groceries into her car, and the 91-year-old just floored it, went back, and killed the 45-year-old. So there's all kinds of factors in facing reality.
I think that really supports the point that we've all been making about being very proactive with having the conversation to prevent situations like that from happening. Would anybody else like to address not the actual potential client, the person in need of care, but the family members who are experiencing some denial in regards to their loved one needing care?
I'm back. This is Martha.
Hi, Martha. Okay. No, it's okay. Not a problem. So the question that we're on currently, so far we've been really discussing how do we get the elderly person to be open to the conversation of receiving care, and now we're on the subject of lots of times the actual family members or the family caregiver is experiencing some denial in regards to their loved one needing some additional care. So who would like to address that?
I can answer that question.
Go for it.
All right. So again, my apologies. I got kicked off, but I am back. And I know in talking to a lot of caregivers, sometimes it is that denial of coming to terms with the fact that the parents are aging, for example. You know, the parents have always been this pillar of strength, and they're the ones that raised you, and they're the ones that kind of, you know, did everything for you, and now those roles are reversed. And it's very challenging for especially for an adult child to come to grips with that. And so the way that we tell them to approach it is to really look at it from the point of view of their safety. If mom and dad are no longer able to go up and down the steps by themselves or walk without assistance or cook, it's about safety and how best can you offer some of this assistance. And so it's something to think about. It's something that if you have other siblings to kind of get together and discuss. Have you noticed some things that are changing? Right now with the holidays coming up, I think it's a good example of how you can get family members together and really just talk about, hey, I've seen some changes. Have you noticed those too? Let's talk about what we can do. What are our options?
Thank you, Martha. We're going to play a little bit of catch up with you since your Wi-Fi stopped working. So I'm going to go ahead and ask you a couple of questions. Okay. What factors do family members need to consider prior to discussing receiving professional elder care with a senior loved one?
I think it's always good to really just look at everything. Does that work for you? Is bringing someone in the home on maybe starting off on a part-time basis, is that doable for everyone. I know sometimes the care receiver, let's say maybe the parent, is a little hesitant to bring strangers. I know they often say strangers into their home, but if the care is needed, then maybe start it off a couple of times during the week, maybe for on a limited basis. Maybe one of the things that I suggest is be there while the care provider is also there, so that the parent feels comfortable, and maybe you do another activity rather than cleaning the house, for example. In that way, they kind of ease into that transition.
Martha, I'm a huge fan of not trying to force something really large, which is, a large amount of care. I mean,
yes.
Sometimes they're in need of that from the very beginning, but I find that it's way more effective for the individual if they're not completely open. Okay, let's start slow. Let's build the trust. Let's let you see the value of this. So good point. Another question for you. What are some of the best ways to initiate the conversation with your senior loved ones?
I mentioned earlier the safety concern. I know sometimes whether it's the care receiver saying, oh, no, I don't need care, I'm strong enough, I can fend for myself, and also from the adult-child's perspective, for just that hesitation to see their parents as someone who might need help is really just to keep that conversation, start off that conversation. You don't have to discuss everything and fix everything in one sitting. Maybe what you can do is start talking, be open-minded, use the holidays as a good, starting point to talk about this. Maybe not during the dinner, maybe before or after the dinner time. Schedule some quality time to really sit down around the table and just figure out what the needs are.
Great. Have you guys found that, obviously we're all agreeing it's best to include them in the conversation, then they feel like they're a part of the decision instead of you telling them what you think that they need. Very open about, here's what I'm noticing and here's what I'm thinking, or what do you think you need, or what would be helpful to you? Who would like to address that?
I think somebody, if I can, just really quickly, I know sometimes we look at it as from the perspective of the let's say in this case the adult child providing or needing to provide care for their parents, but sometimes that the senior themselves might be saying, you know what, I'm having a hard time doing this, maybe I need some help. What is out there? Kids, help me figure out what it is that I need and what I can access so that I can help myself.
Joan Stevenson from New Mornings, we have one last question for you. What do you recommend if you have a resisting parent? In other words, a parent who is resisting help.
Well, in my business of maybe helping someone move into a community or having some home care brought into the house, we found that the family physician is probably the best person to move that along. He could even write it out on a prescription pad. Mrs. Jones is no longer able to live at home alone. And when they see that written by their doctor, they're much more likely to say, yes, sir, or something like that. It could even be an accountant. It could be a neighbor. I had a call from a neighbor the other day. Someone, maybe other than a family member, that would encourage them that more help is needed. Sometimes the family member is not the appropriate person. There's too many family dynamics going on. So a doctor is what we have found is the best person, really.
Thank you. Rochelle, with what Jones just said, that sometimes it's best for an outside person, not a family member, to have that conversation, does that speak to the issue that we talked about with the role reversal? And so you can just kind of sidestep the entire issue of the role reversal situation?
Yes, absolutely. I was actually just working with a young girl who's helping her grandmother into assisted living. And, you know, she was very uncomfortable having the first conversation with her grandmother for reasons that we've just discussed. And so what she decided would be helpful is if her mother's boyfriend or companion would have the conversation with her grandmother before she stepped in and supported that and talked to her grandmother. And that just felt a lot more comfortable to her. She felt like, it wasn't really quote unquote her place to have that first conversation with her grandmother. And also we, in the process of talking, we identified that her grandmother does have, someone in charge of the estate. And so we discussed what it would be like to include that person a little bit more as the decision maker, with her authority and placement involved with the will and what have you. So really, for a lot of caregivers, it's a matter of really just thinking outside of the box and considering who else is in our support system, who else are our trusted advisors to include in this process, to take some of the burden off of the most close caregiver, the most close family member.
Thank you, Rochelle. Martha, what are some of the benefits to caregiving you can share with your elderly loved ones?
Reduction in stress. I think we as caregivers want to be the super caregiver, and we can do it all. We know mom the best, and so I am just going to do everything myself. And that just leads to a lot of stress, a lot of feeling like the whole world is resting on your shoulders. So we really need to look at it as a form of stress reliever by incorporating assistance from a professional that can come in and focus on those things that need to be done on a daily basis, maybe cleaning and doing laundry and all of that stuff that, we don't really like to do anyway. And then that way we can spend quality time with the person, our loved one. And it's a better use. It's quality time. It's a better use of your limited time anyway by doing that.
Thank you, Martha. I often explain, one of the benefits to bringing in an outside professional caregiver is that it allows the family members to maintain the integrity of their relationship, the mother-daughter relationship, the father-son, whatever the case may be, by sort of outsourcing all of the minutia. Okay, so
Absolutely.
thank you. We are about to end this call. What I would like to end with is for each of you to briefly explain why it is you do what you do, and then any last bits of advice you would like to leave our audience with. So with that, let's go ahead, Rochelle.
I really do what I do because I love connecting with people, and it's incredibly rewarding to see some of the change within people when they recognize the strength that they have. And feel empowered to make choices and make decisions that help them thrive or help their family members thrive. It's just, I consider it both a privilege and a pleasure to work with the families that I do. And I think that if it was one thing that I would hope that our audience would leave here knowing is that they're not alone. And it might feel very isolating being in the role of a caregiver and very scary and very daunting to consider seeking additional support. But there are people out there who can help, people that you can talk to, and advisors that you can trust to know that you're not in this alone. And I think that can be incredibly relieving and unburdening for many people who are facing this difficult conversation over the holidays.
That's beautiful, Rochelle. Thank you. How about you, Kathy?
Well, I've been in healthcare for over 30 years. I've been a team member there, but it really only took shape for me when I became a caregiver and went on the other side of the coin and realized that I was ill-equipped to be a family caregiver. I needed more information than I could find. So I've kind of made it my mission to help other family caregivers and give them information and let them be experts because as you said, Rochelle, we're not alone, but we don't know that. We need someone to tell us we're not alone and to give us some of the information to help us do the best job we can taking care of our loved ones, whoever they may be. And that's where really my passion got fueled.
Oh. Thank you, Kathy. Joan, why don't you tell us why is it that you do what you do, and do you have any last bits of advice for people heading into the holiday season?
Well, this is advice for any time, and I would give this advice to everyone. Save your money, because senior care is not inexpensive, and the saddest calls we get are people who call and say, my mother has $800 coming in a month. She has dementia and she needs assisted living. So even if you are a daughter and you're listening to this, pass it on to your daughters to start saving for the future, because look at grandma. She just didn't plan for the future. So that's my last bit of advice, and why I'm in this business is because it's been very fun for me, whether I was a sales director at a large retirement community or in the placement business now. It's been very fun and rewarding. Thank you.
Thank you, Joan. Thank you. Okay, Martha, why is it that you do what you do, and any last bit of advice?
I was a family caregiver. I was taking care of my great aunt, so she was my grandmother's sister, who was 93 and had dementia. And I think what happens many times is that we'd say, well, of course I'm going to take care of my mother, my father, my great aunt, right? How difficult is it? I just Google, I just call, I've got this. But a lot of caregivers are ill-equipped to take on this role, and we do it because we love the person. And so I found myself in a position where it became very challenging. I was working full-time, I was pregnant with my first child, and I was a full-time family caregiver. So I reached out to Southern Caregiver Resource Center, and they became that network of care that Rochelle was talking about. They were that extended family that I needed to rely on and lean on without, you know, being judged or criticized for the decisions that I was making on behalf of my aunt. It became very rewarding, and so I continued to help. And after my aunt passed away, and now I'm in this position. And I really want to use that experience to connect with caregivers and tell them that we are here for you. You don't have to do it alone, but most importantly, take time for yourself. So that's my last, you know, wish for caregivers. Really stop and take care of yourself, because if you don't take care of yourself, who's going to take care of you and the person that you're caring for? You really need to put that into perspective.
Thank you very much, Martha. Well, I want to, first of all, say that I'm very thankful that all of you guys chose to be on this panel. And I do what I do because after the military, I got out and I was in various other business development positions. I realized that I needed to do something that was a larger mission, a higher social cause. And I really feel like we're heading into a time where elder care, it's becoming a big deal because the aging population, and we need to make sure that we're all working together and we all are providing resources so that way people do not feel that they're alone and that we can provide the assistance that they need. And I know here at LivHOME, it's very much about helping people. Our hearts are in the right place. Whether or not they utilize our services, I can count on the people, such as these people on this panel, as a sounding board or to provide their resources, so that way at the end of the day, the person gets the help that they need, and that's what we care about. So thank you very much, everybody, for joining this panel discussion, and I hope you all have a very happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you for having us.
Same to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.